Hi, I'm Dan from Green Mountain Compost. Today we're going to be talking about starting seeds. Here at Green Mountain Compost we have an amazing product for starting seeds at home. It's called Premium Seed Starter. It's made out of sphagnum peat moss, compost, vermiculite, and a whole host of organic nutrients and fertilizers. Everything your plant needs to get an early start. Starting your own seeds at home can be a really fun and rewarding process, and it's really not too difficult if you follow a few simple steps. The first thing to consider is when to start your seedlings. If you look at any seed packet, they generally say not only how long it takes for them to grow once they're in the ground, but also how far ahead of time you should start them in the greenhouse or in your living room or wherever you're starting them. The next most important part is what to grow them in. Any container will work to germinate seeds, but it helps to have a shallow container, and we like using ones with lots of different cells in them so you can keep your seedlings apart, you can label them, and you can know how they're doing. They're also easy to transplant into larger containers should you need to do that. Once you have your container, the next step is to add your soil. You can add your seed starter directly to your containers and then add moisture on top, or what we like to do is add the moisture ahead of time and then pack it into your cells so that you have optimal moisture throughout the entire soil. To do that, you'll get a bucket or some large container, pour your soil into the container, and then add water. Add a little bit at a time, and then mix it up by hand until you get a good consistency. So you'll know you're ready when the soil can be squeezed into a bit of a ball, and it'll hold its shape, but you can still crumble it easily. You don't want to be able to squeeze it and see water dripping out. That means you've got too much. So once you've got your soil evenly moistened, you go ahead and fill your cells. You want to pack them in pretty good because you don't want a lot of airspace in there. So you go ahead and add enough soil until they're all the way to the rim. You pack them down a little bit and leave enough space for water once you've got your seeds planted. Once they're in there, you go ahead and make an indentation for where the seeds will go. Now, how big that indentation is going to depend on the type of seed that you're planting. You'll notice on the back of your seed packets that they give a guide for how deep you should plant your seeds. Small seeds generally go very shallow in the soil, just barely covered with a little layer of soil. Big seeds like pumpkins, squashes, sunflower seeds, things like that, they go a little bit deeper in the soil. So tomatoes, which we'll be planting today, these go about 1/4 of an inch down. So make your hole about 1/4 of an inch, and then you can plant 2 or 3 seeds per hole. The reason you plant more than one seed is because sometimes even with great seeds and great soil, they don't all germinate the same. Some of them take a little bit longer, and some of them will outperform the other ones. So it's good to have a choice. Once they've grown up, after a few weeks of growth, they have their first full leaves. At that point, you can select the ones that are the best and keep them to keep growing, and then you can get rid of the ones that aren't growing as well. We're going to go ahead and plant some pumpkin along with these tomatoes. The pumpkin seeds here are 1/2 inch to 1 inch deep. So you can see they're a much bigger seed and they go a little bit further in the soil. So we'll go ahead and make our indentations. And on these, if you had a bigger container, you could plant multiple seeds, but for this one, we're just going to do 1 seed each per hole. Put them down 1/2 inch to 1 inch, and then you pack the soil in on top of them. It's good to have a little extra around just in case you're not quite up to the rim. Pack it in well, and you should be good. All right, now that we have our seeds in the soil, we're ready to think about what's next. Most seedlings need a few things in order to do well: heat, light, and water. So heat is an important one because seedlings require about 65 to 85 degrees in order to both germinate and then to thrive as seedlings. This is about what temperature it is in most homes, but you might need to adjust the location of your seedlings in order to maintain that temperature. Some seeds, like peppers and tomatoes, actually require a little additional heat at the early stages in order to get to germination. That can be done with a commercial heat mat that you could get at a garden center, or if you just find a warmer place of your house, such as near a heat source, on top of a refrigerator, something like that, that can give them the extra heat they need to germinate. After heat's taken care of, you're going to focus on moisture. So we've added moisture in the beginning, but we want to maintain a similar amount of moisture until the seeds are germinated. This can be done with a plastic hood available at a garden center that just fits right over your tray. It can also be done with something as simple as plastic wrap. You wrap it over the top of your cells, and that should contain the moisture until the seeds have started to emerge. Once you see a little bit of green, pull off the hood or the plastic, and your seeds have emerged and they're ready for normal watering. Also critical at this stage is light. Seedlings need about 14 to 15 hours of light per day in order to do well. That can be really hard in our northern climate where the sun just isn't out that much. So you're going to need to find an additional source of light, be that a grow light or a fluorescent light bulb fixture, something that's going to give them enough light close to where the seedlings are to make sure that they grow really strong. If you don't have enough light, they tend to grow really leggy and don't have enough strength to survive transplanting into your garden. If everything's gone according to plan, the next step is transplanting. Some seeds, like tomatoes, require one-step transplant before they're ready to go out to the garden. So you're going to want another pot. If you look at these are tomatoes that we started probably 3 or 4 weeks ago. If we pull them out, you'll notice they've got some really good root growth in there. These are a little bit young yet, but probably within a week they'll be ready to transplant onto a larger container. At that point, you want to make sure that you are selecting your best plant. So we're going to actually pinch off these 2 other plants that are a little bit smaller. And then you transplant that into another container and keep watering it and keep it growing for another several weeks. Before you transplant into the garden, there's one more critical step, and that's called hardening off. Little seedlings that you've grown indoors and kept away from the sun and the wind won't be quite as strong as what you need in order to survive out in the outside real-world environment. So we harden off. Now, you've got your transplant. It's going to continue to grow. Tomatoes, generally, by the time they go outside, are that big. In order to harden them off, you're going to want to expose them to the elements outside slowly over time. Usually this can be done between 4 days, maybe a week. And every day you're going to want to put them outside in the sun where they're exposed to wind for a little bit longer. So the first day, set them out somewhere slightly shaded for maybe an hour or 2. Bring them back inside. The second day, add an hour. The third day, add another hour or 2. After 4, 5, 6 days of that, your plants are going to be really strong and ready to survive whatever Mother Nature throws at them. Our premium seed starter makes growing seedlings really fun and easy for the whole family. If you've followed all the steps correctly, you should be enjoying beautiful plants in your garden in no time. Thanks for listening and have a great time in the garden.